Well, if I haven't met you yet, my name is Ben Karwoski. This is week number 2 as pastor, so it is good to be with you, Connection family, and it's good to see you here today. One of the things that I absolutely love in life is home projects. We bought a house in 2020, and as we did that, I was so excited that the bathroom looked terrible. And that it was a 2-bedroom house with a lower level that was finished, but needed a ton of work in order for me to turn it into the primary suite that we would use so that each of our kids upstairs could have their own 2 bedrooms. I've done like the drywall and the floors and changed all the lighting. I've put fans in every room in the house. Our bathroom, floors and the whole shower had to come out and we got to replace that. One of my favorite pictures of my little girl is her strapped to her mom's chest while we're in there putting the tile up in the bathroom shower together. Absolutely love those things, but there's one house project that I absolutely cannot stand, and it's gardening. I cannot stand gardening. It starts out okay. It's this time of year, you get like real hopeful, the weather's nice, you go outside, I've already gone, got truckloads full of mulch, come back, put that stuff out there, and like it instantly looks better. It starts to look amazing. And then you get really hopeful. And you're like, we're going to go pick up some tomatoes. We're going to pick up some squash. We're going to get some flowers. And this whole place is going to look beautiful. And you put the flowers in the ground, and for a few weeks, everything looks great. You put the tomatoes in the ground, and you have this like, the harvest is coming, and I can't wait for it to get here. But then June and July come, right? And it's hot, and it's sticky. And I don't like hot and I don't like sticky. And the weeds, they like hot and sticky. Like they just start coming up out of the ground one after another after another. And I delay and I delay and I delay. And there comes this point at like the end of June, the beginning of July, where I can't stand the look of the weeds anymore. And I finally head outside to take care of it. And like by the time I get from the back door to the raised bed, I'm already starting to drip, right? Like there's sweat rolling down my forehead before I even get to the bed. I bend over, I start pulling weeds. Sweat is dripping down my arms. What was dirt is now like mud on my hands because I'm sweaty, it's dirty. I'm wiping it off on my forehead to get the sweat off. Now I've got mud on my forehead. The sweat keeps dripping. Now I've got mud in my eyes. It's a terrible experience. I absolutely hate, they call it gardening. They should call it weeding with extra benefits. Right? Like, I can't stand gardening. And the thing about it is some people actually absolutely love gardening and they enjoy it. And they go out there day after day after day. They're steady in the pursuit of this hobby that they enjoy. And so I've tried that approach this year on my front beds because we're selling our house and it has to look nice. And so every day I walk out there to see has anything popped up. And it turns out when you go out there day after day that pulling weeds isn't that bad. They're this tall. They haven't developed root systems that are this tall, right? Like they come right out of the ground, nice and easy. They haven't started to multiply and take over. And people who love gardening, they have this unwavering, this steadiness, the way of doing the same things over and over and over again. And because they are unwavering, because they are steady, because they are faithful, they find an abundant harvest or that beautiful picturesque garden that they pictured when it gets to the end of the year. We're starting off a new season. We've gone through transition, and I'm here as pastor. And as we do that, I think one of the most important things that we can be focused on is what does it look like to be steady? What does it look like to be unwavering? What does it look like to hold on to the things that we know are true and have lives that are changed because of them in Jesus? And so we're following through the book of Daniel, looking at, in the first 6 chapters, we get the narrative of the story of Daniel, so all the stories that we're familiar with. And then the last 6 chapters, which AJ read from this morning, tell the prophecy of Daniel. It was actually a prayer that Daniel spoke, that's recorded in that prophecy that AJ read this morning. But this story is begging for our attention. How do we be steady? How do we be unwavering in our walk with Jesus? And so we remember last week, Daniel is in exile. He's been removed from his homeland. He's been taken to Babylon. And he is there, and they're trying to sway his allegiance, to change who he is, so that instead of being a person of Israel or a person of Judah, instead of being someone who follows the Lord, that he would have his allegiance swayed and he would be someone who is obedient to the king. And 15-year-old Daniel, like younger than some of the young people in the room that were leading worship this morning, has the unwavering character to say, I'm not going to accept the king's food, but I'm going to do what my people do. I'm going to live an unwavering, I'm going to live a steady, I'm going to live a faithful life. Didn't point this out when we talked about this story last week, but if he was 15 years old and he was leading his friends in obedience to the Lord, there were probably some people a long time ago in Judah who poured their lives into him. It's a pretty cool story, pretty phenomenal legacy. I got to meet with Rachel and Hannah this last week and talk to them a little bit about kids ministry. Some people who are like pouring their lives into our kids so that they might be faithful and obedient to Jesus. They spent like 3 years leading that up out of their own time. So thank you. I don't know if Hannah's in here. There she is. Thank you for all that you guys have done. Thank you to our volunteers who serve our kids week in and week out. We appreciate you. If you want to volunteer, they need more people. They would love some more hands helping out if you want to help out once a month, or maybe you just want to be like, hey, I can be on call so that when somebody calls in sick, you guys don't have to do that. But we love our kids and love pouring into them. So Daniel shows up, he's 15, and he has this unwavering faithfulness. He's consistent in his obedience. And that's where we pick up in Daniel chapter 2. There's a lot of narrative that we're going to read through, a lot of scripture to read through this week. There will be some verses that we skip along the way, not because they're not important, but because we want to get through what we're going to get through within the next half hour or so. But we're going to start in verse 1 of Daniel chapter 2. It says, in the 2nd year of his reign, King Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His mind was troubled and he could not sleep. So the king summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell them what he had dreamed. So they come to him, and in verse 5, here's what the king says. The king replied to the astrologers, "This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, tell me what the dream was, like out of thin air. Tell me what my dream was and interpret it. I will have you cut into pieces and your houses turned into piles of rubble. But if you tell me the dream and explain it, you will receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. So tell me the dream and interpret it for me." So the king doesn't trust his people. He doesn't trust the enchanters, the magicians, the sorcerers, the astrologers. Like, this is the cream of the occult crop, and he has no trust in them. By the way, small side note, we think maybe King Nebuchadnezzar a long time was looking into these things and that we've moved on, that that's not something people are doing thousands of years later. People are still searching for truth in all kinds of places. Psychic services last year in the U.S. was a $2 billion industry, and online services of the same kind, over $3 billion last year in the United States. A generation is searching for answers and looking in a lot of places that aren't going to give them the truth. And even King Nebuchadnezzar saw that. He's telling his people, I don't trust what you say anymore. I don't trust that what you're going to tell me is true. So I need you to tell me what the dream was if I'm going to trust your interpretation of it. And here's how his fortune-telling lineup responds to him. In verse 10, the astrologers answered the king, there is no one on earth who can do what the king asks. No king, however great and mighty, has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or astrologer. What the king asks is too difficult. No one can reveal it to the king except the gods, and they do not live among humans. So it's fascinating that the king's fortune-telling lineup admits to him there to his face, we can't do it. What you've said is impossible. There's no one who can do it. It's interesting, except the gods. They're almost right. They're on the cusp of it. There is one true God who can tell him what he's dreamed because he actually knows. And this response makes the king angry. Verse 12, this made the king angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree was issued to put the wise men to death, and men were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to put them to death. And so here Daniel and here all the wise men of the rest of Babylon sit in this predicament. The king has asked the impossible of us, and if we can't pull it off, we're going to be put to death. What's Daniel going to do? What are his buddies going to do? What are the rest of these fortune tellers? What are they going to do? Because I think there's a lot of normal reactions in a situation like this. Normal reaction would be like to freak out. My life is on the line. I'm going to die and there's nothing I can do to stop it. Normal reaction might be to run to King Nebuchadnezzar and take a shot in the dark. I don't know what it is, but if I just stand here and don't say anything, it looks like I'm going to lose my life. I might as well say something. Normal reaction might be to run to the king and say, hey, pretty please, can you change your mind? Like, this isn't reasonable, right? Normal reaction might be, we talked about Babylon last week. The walls are high. He's got the most mighty army on the face of the planet. But normal reaction might be to say, hey, do you know what? I'm going to give running a shot. I'm going to get out of here. Because it looks like I'm going to die if I stay. I might as well try and get out and leave. And if I die along the way, it's all the same. And we don't get the stories of how the king's enchanters react, but they might have reacted in so many of those ways, but Daniel does not. Daniel is God's man, and Daniel is unwavering. And so verse 17 tells us how the unwavering person of God responds. It says, then Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Daniel's reaction is to pray. Daniel's reaction is to grab his friends by the collar and say, hey guys, it's time for us to hit our knees and pray to the Lord. Because I don't have answers. I can't fix this. You can't fix this. But we know one who does. So we're going to hit our knees and we are going to pray to the Lord. And the Lord responds to their prayer. Verse 19. During the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven and said, praise be to the name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and raises up others. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we asked of you, and you have made known to us the dreams of the king. It's fascinating. Daniel is in a predicament. I've got to deliver something to the king, or he is going to take my life. He prays to the Lord. The Lord gives Daniel what he has asked for. And I think that for most of us at that time, we would say, sweet, I got to get to the king and I've got to take it to him because my life's on the line. Up until this point, my life was out of my control and there was nothing I can do about it. Now the Lord has given me the one thing that I need to control my fate. It's time to take it to the king and get this taken care of. And instead, Daniel comes to the Lord again to give praise to his name. For Daniel, prayer wasn't just the posture of desperation. For Daniel, prayer is the posture of his life. Daniel is unwavering in his prayer in the good times and in the bad. If we're going to follow the Lord, if we're going to be participants in what the Lord is inviting us into, then prayer is the posture of the people of God. If you need help in your life, trusting in God's accomplishments and what Jesus has done for you over what you can do for yourself, it starts with a prayer movement. If you need help accepting the love of Jesus instead of looking for the approval of others, it starts with a prayer movement. If we need help trusting in God's provision instead of trying to take control into our own hands, it starts with a prayer movement. If we want freedom from our sin, it starts with a prayer movement. If we want to overcome generations of patterns, of family sin pattern, it starts with a prayer movement. If we're going to forgive others, ending bitterness and resentment in our own lives, it starts with a prayer movement. If we're going to go forward as a church, if we're going to see lives restored, it starts with a prayer movement. If we're going to see wounds healed, it starts with a prayer movement. If we're going to see prodigals return, it starts with a prayer movement. If we're going to see people receive freedom from their sins, it starts with a prayer movement. If we're going to see lives restored, it starts with a prayer movement. If we're going to see freedom from addiction, it starts with a prayer movement. If we're going to see relationships restored, if we're going to see lost people come to Jesus, if we're going to see salvation floods the streets, it starts with a prayer movement. If we're going to be a body who lives on mission together, it starts with a prayer movement. We desire to see in Vermilion County as it is in heaven. I don't have the power to do that on my own. You don't have the power to do that on your own, and we don't have the power to do that even together. But there is a God in heaven who hears our prayers and acts on behalf of his people. If we're going to see in Vermilion County as it is in heaven, it starts with a prayer movement. A.B. Simpson started the Christian Missionary Alliance, the group of churches that we are a part of. He said this: prayer is the primary work of God's people. Prayer is the primary work of God's people. So before we go in strategy, our first response is to go to the Lord in prayer. It's fascinating in Daniel 9 that AJ read from earlier, the posture that Daniel has before the Lord. I'm going to pick up right about where AJ left off in verse 18. Daniel prays this: "We do not make request of you because we are righteous." You pick that theme up in what AJ read for us earlier. That Daniel was admitting the fault and admitting the sins of himself and of the people of God. We do not make requests of you because we are righteous, but because of your great mercy. Lord, listen. Lord, forgive. Lord, hear and act. For your sake, my God, do not delay, because your city and your people bear your name. So we read this prayer. Daniel has this posture. I can't do it. I'm not good enough. It's certainly not by my righteous act or my righteous deeds that the people of Israel deserve to be freed and go home. But I'm praying to the Lord. I'm begging for him to pour out his mercy and trusting that he will act on behalf of his people. And this is how the story comes to a little bit of conclusion. Verse 26, the king asked Daniel, also called Belteshazzar, "Are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it?" Daniel replied, "No wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come." Daniel goes on and shares this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. We're not going to dive into the dream today. I can tell you it's a lot about the kids' video that we watched, not today, but the 2 weeks previous, that the Lord is acting. There will be kings and there will be kingdoms, and they will be imperfect and they will be unjust, but the Lord will establish his kingdom, and he will establish his dominion and power and presence on the earth forever through a Messiah. Verse 46, then King Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him. And the king said to Daniel, "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and the revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery." Then the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished many gifts on him. And he made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all its wise men. Moreover, at Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego administrators over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court. Daniel didn't trust in his own skills. He didn't trust in his own abilities. He didn't trust in a can-do attitude or any answers of his own. Daniel trusted in the Lord, and so he went to the Lord in prayer. As we search out the Lord, as we ask the Lord to do what only he can do at this church and in this town and in this community, it's not going to be by power. It's not going to be by our own strategy. It's not going to be by having the best person speaking up here on Sundays. It's not going to be by having the best worship team, although y'all did phenomenal, and thank you for leading us into worship this morning. It's not by that. It's not by having the programs. Our kids, when we came here 5 weeks ago or whatever it is for the first time that we visited in a while, our kids went downstairs. They came back up here like, "Mom and Dad, when do we get to come back?" That was phenomenal. I love what is happening with our kids ministry, but it's not by our programs, it's not by our kids ministry, it's not by our organization that the Lord is going to do this. We must come to the Lord in prayer and ask him to move. So let me ask you, what do your rhythms of prayer look like right now? How often are you on your knees before the Lord asking for him to have his way in our church and in our community? How often are we just praying for lost people to come to know Jesus and that we might get to participate in that with the Lord? How often are you grabbing your brothers like Daniel did by the collar and say, "Hey boys, we're coming to the feet of the Lord. Because we're going to ask him to do some things that we could never accomplish on our own. If we're going to see a move of the Lord, if we're going to see what I think a lot of us are searching for together, it's not about the right pastor or the right strategy. It's about what God does. You notice at the end of the story, God does a couple things. Not only does he save Daniel's life, but the king responds, right? Surely your God is the God of gods. Surely he is the Lord of lords. There's this idea that the king sees what the Lord has done and he recognizes who God is in that moment. If we want to see our community know who God is and experience him, then we better be on our knees before the Lord, begging him to do the work. And just as Daniel and his friends received blessing in the midst of that, we will receive blessing as we participate with the Lord in what he is doing. What we're searching for comes by a move of God. It comes by a move of God. And God moves when his people pray.